Welcome back. I hope you had a great lunch and you got to spark some insightful conversations with your fellow audience members. Our next speaker is Vijay Dixit, the CEO of the Shreya R. Dixit Memorial Foundation. Vijay left his professional career to champion teen driver safety after a distracted driver killed his 19-year-old daughter, Shreya, on November 1st, 2007. A month later, Shreya R. Dixit Memorial Foundation was born as a nonprofit to educate and inspire young drivers to adopt a distraction-free driving as part of a healthy lifestyle. Ava was actually an intern for his foundation last summer and can say for a fact that his foundation's work has positively impacted the lives of thousands of teenagers across the country. Vijay will describe a peer-to-peer influence-based program, Distraction-Free Life Club, which he developed to instill responsible driving behaviors among youth. Vijay is the author of One Split Second, a highly researched book about how the epidemic of distracted driving kills and how we can fix it. In her foreword, U.S. Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota described the book as a call to action written with heart. Please join me in welcoming Vijay on stage with his speech, I Found My Roadmap for Confronting Tragedy in a Blooming Lotus.
2 days in my life are etched in my heart, brain, memory, everything that describes Vijay Dixit. 31st of October 2007 was the day when my daughter Shreya had a best time of her life. Trick-or-treating at University of Wisconsin in Madison, where she was an international business student in the sophomore year. Come 24 hours later, she was dead. Why? Well, before I go into that, let me explain who Shreya was. She was an international business student, but we had just celebrated her 19th birthday. 6 weeks prior to that, on the 16th of September 2007. And that was the last time we saw her. We'd gone there and had a great time. Who knew that that would be the last time she will hug us? She'll say goodbye, not once, twice, but for the last time. Well, our life was completely stopped, like with, brakes, as if someone came in front of us and our car just completely pressed on the brakes and came to a complete halt. We didn't know what to do. Just did not know what to do. Well, what happened was, she was coming home for the Hindu festival of Diwali, the festival of lights, and she was coming for the weekend to spend that festival with the family in Eden Prairie, Minnesota. About 45 minutes on the highway, the girl who was driving the car in which Shreya was a passenger, front passenger, got distracted, crashed the car, and that was with a big, heavy pylon, and Shreya was crushed between 2 tons of steel and the impact of the cement pylon. That was unbearable. Again, we did not know what to do. What to do? So what we did was, we went to University of Wisconsin, 4.5 hours. That is one thing we definitely knew. We drove 4.5 hours. On earlier occasion, Shreya would just come running towards us, full of life, and give us real warm hugs. That would last for half a minute, 2 minutes. Come on, Shreya, stop it. But now, when we visited her, we went into a room. There she was, lying lifeless. She was not smiling. She was not running. We saw her ice cold. The warmth of a hug was gone. The pleasant, lively personality was gone. We were absolutely devastated. That devastation, is very difficult to handle, very difficult to handle. So we have to kind of struggle with it, do something, and kept talking about what could we do. And so what we did was, not too long after we cremated her, we went to Arboretum, University of Minnesota's Landscape Arboretum, and we just walking through, and suddenly we saw a lotus flower in a pond. Wow. Epiphany. My wife said, "What? What happened?" I said, "Well, few days ago, Shreya lost her rights. She was deprived of her international business degree. And we had become life members. Myself, my wife Rekha, and my daughter Neha, of what we call the bereaving family of the world club. Yeah, got life membership to it. And so he said, "Well, okay, we are talking about that. What is this lotus?" I said, "Lotus is the one, do you know that it grows in swamps?" She said, "Oh, yeah, we know. It grows in swamps." I said, "And what does it do?" He said, "Give joy to the world." I said, "Okay." So, moving next, I have a swamp called my tragedy, calamity that have stuck us. And we need to do something in Shreya's memory to do things that will give happiness, joy, peace to the world. Both of us stood there, started to talk, converse, brainstorm. Again, I immediately thought, "Hey, Rekha, how about asking Shreya?" He said, "What? You want to ask Shreya for what?" I said, "She always would interrupt us, our conversations, and would give all sorts of suggestions. Let me ask Shreya. Shreya, what would you do?" Of course, there was no sound, no voice, nothing. But what we heard was what Shreya was. She was a very pleasant, funny person, always was making fun of everyone around her, made fun of my obsession with the game of cricket in America. That was very funny. She was a volunteer, lifelong volunteer. She went to the 35W bridge collapse within 1 hour, taking phone calls. She volunteered at the Mary's home in Minneapolis, coaching and mentoring elementary school students to do their homework. She was also a musician. She sang very well. She was a soprano in the Minnesota Youth Choir. And when she was growing up in Simsbury, Connecticut, she, in her 5th grade, was selected for the youth choir in Connecticut. Now, most of the youth choir members are high schoolers. Those high schoolers were there singing for a long time, and here Shreya gets into that choir. It was so funny. It was so funny to see her enter a concert hall for a recital. This tall, 5th grade. Everyone else in that choir group was at least 1 foot taller or more. This is how we found joy in her personality. She was a problem solver. She was a problem solver, was actually designated to be the problem solver in a group of 12, 13 of her friends. Even on the day she was coming home, she called us. She said, "Dad, don't pick me up because Sarah is going to pick me up and she'll bring us home. She's having some personal problems. I need to solve them." So, okay, fine, go ahead. So all these qualities that she had, I thought, couldn't we just pick up those and run with it? She said, "What should we do?" I said, "I feel like working with teens to do something that she would have loved to do." And then suddenly I thought, Shreya was a teenager, so we must work with teens. And that's where the Lotus helped us. Now, Lotus, does lots of things. So we had actually started the roadmap to our future, from my professional corporate career to another path that I was going to take. No idea what and where it was going to take us. One thing about Lotus is this: it grows in a swamp and then produces those beautiful flowers. But it does two things. It first internally grows internally, under the swamp, away from your eyes, nurturing itself, getting stronger, and then blooms, and the moment you bloom, it starts giving joy to the world. So I said, I have to be a lotus. That is where the metaphor began and ended. I said, okay, metaphorically, my wife said, is fine, but what do you want to do? I said, I'm going to turn my future into two kind of components: internal component and external component. He said, okay, you know what you're saying. That's what she said. She was not convinced at all. I said, okay, internally, I have to learn about grief. I have to learn about how to manage calamities. I have to learn about something which I have not been taught. So, where did I go? I went to these two books. And I urge everyone in this audience to go and read these books if you have any problem. The one on the left, Kubler-Ross, she was actually a psychiatrist, lived in Germany and moved up here. And she created that famous model of managing grief, 5-step model you might have heard of. And she worked with those people who were dying. That is where she got her knowledge. So that is the knowledge she got, and I want to get it. So I went through that process. Yeah, fine, accepted. We have accepted Shreya is gone. Second one, okay, but after acceptance, it's so difficult to live this life. It's just like a wound that someone has put salt on it, along with some lemon juice and some vinegar, and we're hurting. So I said, I got to do that, but how? So in my path to where I'm going, I thought, let me break it down into pieces. First was the 5 stages, right? Acceptance, done. Now, what's happening is, So this is where I was. I was at the acceptance level. But then, that is not the end. In the book that Ross wrote, acceptance is the end, supposedly. But then I had to find meaning in life. That is what Franken told me in his book, In Search for Meaning. And that is where I started with the second step, and that was developing content. Content is a very broad word. Content is knowledge, read books, talk to people, go here, go there, and learn about the problem. Develop that content. And once you have learned the problem, start making some small solutions from applications, small talks, and all that stuff, so that you could take it to the next level. Next level is engagement. I got to engage now to spread that knowledge, or at least brainstorm with them to critique my knowledge, my hypothesis, my assumptions that I'm making in my road to peace. So I met with counselors, I met with all sort of researchers in psychology, read a lot about teenage brain, how it develops, what are the problems, how they can be influenced. Law enforcement officers, lawmakers, lot of advocacy groups. Also, I met with grieving parents, grieving families. I met with those who have been injured by bad actions of a distracted driver. And also, and I'm proud to say that, I worked with offenders also. Those who were responsible for killing, as was my daughter's driver. I don't blame her. It's the action, irresponsible action that she took, which is to be improved or managed or confronted. So with that knowledge, I was now getting pretty good at it. So I had so much knowledge about how the distraction works and what are the causes and all that stuff. And then I want to become an expert. As an expert in grief, an expert in mentoring, an expert in traumatic growth management. That is what I became an expert in. All right, 4 steps done. But the 5th step was extremely difficult, but very enriching and valuable for me, as well as the people I was targeting. I wrote this book, 1 split second, in which what I did was I consolidated all my knowledge, all my learning into a piece of literature. I had to document it and delivered it to the world. Now, talking about delivery to the world, I had created a lot of things in that book. I discussed distracted driving, causes, all the data that goes with that. But at the end, I also wanted to give some solutions, how to fix that problem. To fix that problem, one of the 4 or 5 solutions that are conceptualized in that book was creating a distraction-free life model at high schools or teen groups, youth groups. And that's what we started to implement. So my early phase 1 activity, the internal activities lasted maybe 2-3 years between 2007 and 2009. Then I went to the step 3 and step 4, and that was more like 2010 to 2013. During that, we developed a special type of a online e-learner for managing distracted driving among teens with MIT professor from the East Coast. He was also the executive director at MIT's Hypermedia Lab. So he gave me the technology and deployed it. So with those tools, we have been able to do reasonably good things. And that model that I deployed at Eden Prairie High School, and actually there are a couple of your students, Ava, and we have Elizabeth Wang in this audience, who are also part of that group. And then we have some other from throughout the country, from New York, Nevada, California, New Jersey, Texas, and all sorts of places. And now what have they learned in this? What I see, it's a huge slide, but I'll run through it very quickly. The model that we created is sustainable. It goes across all of it. We're starting with teens, but I think it's applicable to everyone. Countrywide reach. We reach throughout the country with our internship programs. And then, of course, can be replicated. It does instill very good behaviors. They teach them conflict resolution. They teach them how to manage your overall business personality. And those kinds of things are very important for teenagers when they leave school and go to college and beyond to the corporate. You'll be happy to know 2 kids who were our first presidents in 2015. They went through the school, went to college on the West Coast and even in the state of Minnesota, and now they're working in corporations, one in Microsoft, other Silicon Valley, and they are still spreading the word. In fact, they haven't lost track of their roots in Eden Prairie Distraction-Free Life Club. They still manage our internship program 6 years after they gave their presidency to other students. So this model has given me lot of good feelings. At the same time, after so many years of journey, 14 years of journey, we haven't stopped. There'll be other problems next year. COVID was there last year, still continuing. And then, but one thing is there, that it delivered us peace internally, and also it creates an environment where all the community can get together to create a better future, whether it is business, volunteering, because we could not do all the things that Shreya was doing. We picked one where she was working with friends to volunteer. So we're teaching volunteering, leadership skills in those distraction-free life clubs. And very happy to tell you that last year, the Towards Zero Death program at State of Minnesota's Department of Public Safety awarded the leaders of the Eden Prairie Distraction-Free Life Club Emerging Leaders Award. And that was very enriching, very rewarding, high value for my peace. And as I look back and see, I just, keep thinking about Shreya still. But then one day, right again sitting next to the same lotus pond in Arboretum, I looked up. Wow, who I saw? Shreya, waving at me with a lotus, blooming lotus in her hand, and shouting down to me, "Hey, Dad, great work. Keep it up, keep it up." I said, "Oh, Shreya, thank you so much for guiding me. I'm sure we will keep it up. Thank you, but don't forget us. Keep guiding us." "Oh, yes, Dad, I will." And we give a high five. Thank you.